Welcome to the Made Fitz Show. Now we're diving deep into the world of hormones, health, and thriving as a modern woman. Our guest is the incredible Becca Chilczenkowski. Yes. She's a board-certified hormone specialist, co-founder of Fit Mom, and co-host of the Health Revival Show. It's a top 100 podcast in alternative health. Becca is a mom of two, a recovering fitness addict, and a heavy lifting CrossFit enthusiast. She's passionate about cutting through the noise of fad diets and quick fixes to help women tackle stubborn weight loss, hormonal chaos, and the chronic health struggles with practical, no-nonsense strategies. Ladies, if you've ever felt like your body's gone rogue, which I think we all have, this episode is for you. Becca is here to help us decode perimenopause, navigate hormone replacement therapy, and bust myths around the latest trends like GLP-1 medications. So grab your coffee, tea, or wine. We ain't here to judge. And let's get into it. And I want to say before I even let her speak, this is a take two. So Becca and I were hot and heavy, probably 30 minutes into a podcast together. And I'm being dead honest, I was into the podcast. I'm very excited to have her back on. Her and I just two girls drinking our drinks, talking about life. And I was just like, this is going to be a really good podcast. And all of a sudden she disappeared. You guys know my internet problems. And I couldn't even get back on to be like, I'm so sorry. So my wonderful assistant, Kelly's like messaging her like, we're going to have to reschedule. So here we are taking round two, and Becca's full of smiles. So she's forgiven me. But I so appreciate you being here.
I understand technical difficulties, and I don't understand technical difficulties at the same time. So, it's I'm more than happy to come back and restart our conversation. We were very into talking about your whole mold detox process and all things. And yeah, I'm
poop. We were talking a lot about constipation, and you had such a, I actually started to feel bad because it was almost like you were, being a practitioner for me, because we just started talking about, what I had been going through, and you had some great ideas. So we can relive that a little. I've been working on my drainage for now. It's probably been about 6 weeks. And now working more, adding more of the ingredients to help, try to eliminate some of the mold in my system. But I am happy to say, and I'm so sorry, I know my audience knows me if it's TMI, but I had 2 bowel movements this morning. I mean, Miss Constipated had 2 this morning. I was walking with my girlfriend and my husband, and I looked at him, I'm like, I don't mean to brag, but I had 2 bowel movements. And you said something so refreshing to hear, because what I really dove into after just general schooling was I'm so fascinated by the gut. And so a lot of times we feel like, whether you're just the layman or you listen to a lot of people on social media, or even, a nutritionist who dives into gut health, it's all about the gut. It has to be the gut. There has to be something wrong with the gut, why you're constipated or have diarrhea. And the gentleman I'm working with, Josh, and then even you're like, not always. It's not always about the gut that's going to cause, these distresses and how you eliminate. And so if you want to just kind of talk about that a little bit with your clients, when they have these kind of issues, that you look past the gut, which is what I had to ask somebody else to look past, because I was just sure I wasn't getting enough fiber. I wasn't hydrating enough. My microbiome was out of whack, and nothing that I was trying was working.
Yeah, absolutely. So with most of our chronic constipation clients, we see more liver gallbladder issues than we do the gut issue. Because we'll get GI maps on them, and it's like, hey, not a ton here. Oh, but steatocrit's high. Like, you're not breaking down fats well, where triglycerides are really low. That's usually an indication that you aren't breaking down fats very well. And the biggest thing that we talk about is, bile is a product produced by the liver, stored in the gallbladder if you have one, right? And a couple things can happen with low estrogen and high estrogen. So low estrogen, and I'm just going to take a gander here, because of how lean and fit you are, you might have had low hormones at a time. Low estrogen can start to make bile really sluggish, and
Mm,
high estrogen can actually thicken bile. So then it
okay.
doesn't move as well through the gallbladder, out of the gallbladder into the small intestine to help break down fats. And then what happens is bacteria that should kind of remain in the colon backs up into the small intestine. And so this is where a lot of the SIBO comes from and a lot of the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And every time we eat, bile should actually kind of recirculate through this process up to 16 times every meal, which is insane.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
what it does is it cleans and it detoxifies and it attaches to things and helps process the food. And if we aren't moving bile very well, things get really sluggish in our digestive system. And
Yeah.
so another thing I tend to see with all of my ex athletes, addicts to exercise, maybe undereaters intentionally or unintentionally,
Mhm.
is you put a lot of stress on the liver when you do that because the liver is one of the main producers of glucose or glycogen. And so what happens is when you're in constant need of glucose because you're pushing your body so hard in workouts all the time, the liver gets really stressed out. And so we see this very commonly with like our physique competitors, over
Sure.
exercisers, females that are maybe, again, chronically or not consistently and consciously under eating or not. We see it happen with these people because they start to mess up liver function and bile production and movement of bile. And most of those people have low hormones, which then
Mhm.
affects bile even more. So a lot of times the constipation is more liver gallbladder in those cases, versus the gut.
Yeah. Ah, which I should have seen because I've always, I think we talked about this last time too in my blood work. Liver enzymes, ALT and AST that you see when you get blood work done, was always one of the very few things that was, a borderline high or even sometimes in the red. And I'm like, healthy me, healthy me. My liver isn't just like killing the game.
Mhm.
Um, but that, that's so refreshing to hear from me and anybody I know that's listening, so refreshing to hear because that's so much what the last thing that we think of, I think. And so I'm really excited
I know, I know. I actually,
for the,
so just to kind of pre-qualify myself, like you mentioned, I'm board certified hormone
yes,
specialist, love doing all of that stuff, but my own background and story is why I ultimately got into this because I was that too. The reason I have a small love still for CrossFit is because it was what helped me lose 50 pounds back in the day,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, and it gave me discipline and it gave me structure and it gave me an answer and kind of that thing that got me out of the rut of like, the yo-yo dieting and like kind of working out, but not really knowing what I was doing. And I found it in my 20s, which is great because, you can drink gasoline and get 3 hours of sleep and still survive in your 20s. But when you're in your, 30s and 40s, you get like 6.5 hours instead of 7 hours and you can't get out of bed because you feel like you're hungover. And it's just this such drastic change. But my body handled the CrossFit. I should say, like, quote unquote, handled the CrossFit at that
yeah,
time. But in reality, it wasn't handling it. Like, it
yeah,
was putting so much stress on my system. And it got to the place where I was just uncontrollably gaining weight. And I was still working out really hard. I was still eating. I was tracking my macros. I was not overeating. Nothing changed.
yep,
And the hardest part about it all is like, I was constipated. I wasn't sleeping well. I was super moody, but I didn't have a diagnosis. Like, I didn't have an
hmm,
autoimmune. I didn't have mold. I didn't have any of these, big, even functional things, let alone the conventional, like hypothyroidism,
sure,
anything. And nothing was showing up on labs or with anything that I was testing. And I think a lot of women go through this to where like they can't control weight, they don't feel great, but they're not straight out sick. It's like this
yeah,
ish, like you have
yeah,
an autoimmune ish, like it's not an actual diagnosis, but it feels kind of like one. You're just blah. And
hmm,
so what we actually, through all of this time and through my research and my experience and mentors of mine, starting to understand how the immune system gets so triggered by chronic stress and undereating and overtraining. And we all know, metabolic adaptation, right? Everyone knows what that is. Like the metabolism slows down, right? But it's so much bigger than that. Like when
yeah,
you underconsume for your output, not only does metabolism slow down, but food stays in the system longer. And so
hmm,
when food stays in the system longer, it doesn't get into cells, which increases oxidative stress in the body, starts to irritate immune cells, starts to create gut imbalances, hormonal imbalances, and it slowly starts to increase inflammation. And it doesn't always happen overnight. And so it's not like oh my God, my experience, it did happen overnight. I put on like 15 pounds in 2 months, but a lot of women, it's like a year and they're up 15 pounds, and then another year and they're up another 10 pounds. And it's like, what is happening?
Yeah.
This slow creep of the immune system,
Mm.
because another big piece of it, I was on birth control for a very long time. Birth control upregulates B and C, T and B cells, which are kind of these inflammatory immune cells. They create antibodies, they help gobble up unhealthy cells that have been infected, but they leave behind inflammation. And birth
Mm.
control downregulates T regulatory cells, which are anti-inflammatory. So you're basically this inflammation state. I had a baby after that coming off of it, and then I tried to get back into CrossFit, and it was just this crossover of too many physical,
Totally.
chemical, emotional stressors. My
Yeah.
body couldn't handle it anymore. A lot of women, it's just a slow creep until maybe COVID, or they get a divorce, or, it's this big stressor that then tips us over the edge.
Hmm.
But the biggest thing for me is like, I didn't have that diagnosis. I didn't have the thing. And it was so frustrating until I realized what the thing was, is it was my stress. It
Mm.
was the stress of
Hmm.
doing what I thought was right,
Hmm.
stress of training a ton and under eating long periods of time. And then it was too many stressors in a row that eventually kind of tipped me over the edge. So that's why perimenopause for a lot of women is that, because of the fluctuations of hormones. Our immune cells have a lot of hormone receptors on them. And so the estrogen ups and downs creates a
Hmm.
lot of immunological activity for perimenopause women. So they experience a lot of weird things happening beyond just like the perimenopause night sweats and, the symptoms that we often correlate. It's like now I have weird joint pain, or now I have insomnia, or now,
Yeah.
all of these strange things that start pop weight gain, right? Uncontrollable weight gain.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm basically, my goal is to try to create more informed consumers in this world, because I feel like unfortunately that perimenopause age range is just a very gaslit population. They're preyed upon because they think, oh, they're desperate, and
Yeah.
they are, but that doesn't
Yeah.
mean you try and sell them things that don't work.
Right.
So, that's kind of why I have my platform, and what we've been trying to do with our practice.
Yeah. So when you I heard a little the door creep open, and it was I don't know if Dr. Lauren, I may be able to get her in here, and
Yeah.
I would love to have the two of you, talk all things hormone, but we'll see. She might have more patience. So I want to hold off on hormones a little bit, but the whole perimenopause, so for me it hit. I was coming into my late 40s, and it's the whole reason I'm on BHRT with Dr. Lauren is because I got my blood work and I was so proud of it, to show it to her and to show how I was in the normal range. And she just coming here to visit me, she brought me a book that from, one of the doctors associated with World Link, that he says normal is not optimal. It's normal doesn't, just because you're having lab work done. So anyway, I was just thinking because I felt great. But she's like, I would love the opportunity to optimize you. And we were just talking about this yesterday. In today's day and age, with the ability to have bioidentical hormones, um, because how you felt in your 20s can be almost possible in your 40s and 50s, because you're going to optimize your hormones back to that time in your life where they should be. And you can, so why wouldn't you? You obviously can live without these bioidentical hormones, but if you have the opportunity to have them and they can help self-regulate, um, it's I feel fantastic. And the funny thing is because I was having night sweats really bad. They just can't. It's the only symptom I had, but I was like, nothing else but that. But they did disappear, and I haven't had any kind of a symptom whatsoever. I'm very, very grateful for that. That being said, I get a lot of women, because perimenopause can hit, it's such a wide range. Women coming to me saying, I think I am.
Yeah.
And sometimes your mom can be a great indication for you. And sometimes, like my mom had a hysterectomy in her 30s. So she wasn't, a real good gauge for me. Help women who are listening that maybe in their late 30s, early 40s, late 40s, that, are maybe having the weight gain, because I don't want to say that they're blaming perimenopause on the fact that they're struggling, but because it's on the forefront of social media. Perimenopause seems to be right now such a hot topic, and everybody is everything that's wrong in the world right now is because they're going through perimenopause. What we can educate them on, these are probably what you're feeling, or these are really truly great indications that perimenopause is knocking on your door, versus maybe take a look at lifestyle first. And it could be lifestyle factors, and menopause just, could be, walking up the steps, but it's not the real issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think in your case, just to come back to you, you seem to be a very metabolically healthy person. And putting hormones into a metabolically healthy body can be beautiful.
Mhm.
I am a huge proponent of making sure you do the work before you go on them, because I think so many women expect them to be this like magic pill and weight loss pill and sleep
Yeah.
pill and
Yes.
all the pills in one. And they can be extremely helpful. And I don't disagree with putting them in place, but I think a lot of people come onto them in a very inflammatory state. And
Oh,
it can actually make things worse, right? We know testosterone with cardiovascular inflammation can worsen cardiovascular inflammation. Progesterone can worsen insulin resistance in high doses. And so there's so many nuances to it. And
yeah.
I mean, I'm 35, 36. Sometimes I don't even know how old I am, but I'm on progesterone.
Same.
I have the
Mm,
I have the
yeah.
history of
Yeah.
overtraining, and every time I get too stressed, my hormones bottom out again. So like I'm staying on progesterone because my
Sure.
periods, one indication, at the age of 36, even my periods were starting to creep down to like 24 days. My cycle was about 24 days long, which sucks because you get a period every 2.5 weeks. And
Yeah.
that is a huge indication of progesterone basically coming offline, and progesterone ends linearly. It is not like estrogen
Mm.
that goes on this crazy roller coaster. Estrogen goes down nice and slow all the way down. And so for a lot of women, that starts in your mid 30s. And so some of the luckier people can last until they're even like I have a 55-year-old I talked to yesterday. She's like, I still have a regular cycle. I was like, bless you, because
Mhm.
most people do not. And the longer you can have hormones, the better. But shorter cycles, meaning a shorter luteal phase, and the lowering
Yeah.
of progesterone is one of the main indications that we start to see. Obviously the night sweats that are consistent, the hot flashes that are consistent, those are very early on or clear signs of perimenopause. And then you have some of the weirder ones, like frozen shoulder, plantar fasciitis are really common with perimenopause.
Like,
Mood is a huge one. So people that feel like they get really irritable and can't tolerate anyone around them anymore is a very
mhm.
big perimenopause. And I think like the hard thing is that you cannot test for most of these.
Right,
Perimenopause
right.
doesn't have a test. Like you can check LH and FSH levels, but even then, it's until you're in menopause, those are going to be going up and down all over the place too. And so you have to go off of symptoms. You have to go off of what's going on and how consistently those things are going on for people. And a lot of women become just naturally estrogen dominant in perimenopause. So breast tenderness, bloating, weight gain, even though they're doing everything the same, sleep issues, they're waking up more frequently, they can't fall back
Mhm.
asleep. They're waking up really early at like 4 a.m. or 3:30 a.m. Like I said, everything with estrogen, breast pain, bitchiness, like all of the things, because estrogen just naturally becomes dominant. Some people
Yeah.
experience more of like a acne, hair loss also, because testosterone starts to become relatively dominant compared to the other hormones, but that usually doesn't
Mhm.
happen until a little bit later on.
Yeah.
Both hormones have kind of lowered with estrogen and progesterone. So there's so many things. People become naturally just physiologically more insulin resistant. So like you start to see A1C creep up a little bit. You start to see, like I said, testosterone becomes a little bit more dominant, and that impacts insulin resistance.
Mhm.
It's a lot, it's a lot that we're going through. And the biggest thing that I always tell people is that perimenopause doesn't cause your problems. It was just the trigger for it. Because most women,
Mhm.
things were going on. Like you just were
Sure.
ignoring the constipation or the fatigue or, the stress issues. Like you were living with them until you couldn't anymore because now
Yeah.
you have a different, stressor trigger of hormonal fluctuations. And that's when people are like, it was perimenopause. And it's like, was it? Or was it just, it would finally tip the scales of everything that you were
Right.
dealing with?
Right. And I love that you say that too, because that's something that Dr. Lauren will talk about a lot too, is hormones, they're not a magic bullet. They're amazing. But if you can't get that lifestyle in check, and so it's so important if you are considering, BHRT, that you know that if you're not living your most healthy life, that has to be in conjunction, or even, start there and give yourself some time to get the diet and exercise and stress and hydration and sleep and all that stuff taken care of before you add that next layer of healing.
Yeah.
Do what you can for yourself first.
And also, like, at the end of the day, the foundations always matter. You know,
Yeah.
and they're boring and they're not sexy and they have to be done consistently. But like, you can't get anything without them, you
Yeah.
know? And
Hmm.
so it's not always everyone's favorite, but if you want to add in the HRT, like make sure you're having the best possible host of a body to receive it for it to
Hmm.
work in the best way possible too.
Hmm.
Because if your body's super inflamed, cells are like closed off in cell danger response because of underlying infections or chronic stress or whatever it might be, your body might not even hear the signals of the hormones very well. And so, it's such a bigger thing than here's a prescription,
Oh,
And
100%.
again, they can be life-changing,
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
life-changing. And I'm a huge proponent and fan of them.
Hmm.
But you got to do the other things.
Yeah.
And hormones are a big web. You add
Yeah.
in some, it's going to affect other things, insulin and adrenals and thyroid and all the things. So,
Yeah, they're communicators. I don't think people really realize what communicators hormones are, and so if you're really turning on one, it's communicating very loudly inside your body, where, if you're ignoring another one, it's getting that little tiny whisper when it needs to communicate, just as loudly. So it is quite the interweb, which what you just said is so true with hormones, but also the GLP-1 medications and stuff like that. I would love your thoughts on those. If you incorporate them, if you believe they are a great tool, if
yeah.
you believe most people, it's funny to listen to having Dr. Lauren here, and my husband is very outspoken. He's very crass, is a good way to put it. Just very honest. Let's just say that. He's one of those
We
men
need
that
honest people in this world.
yeah, yeah. And so he has his opinions of these medications versus, Dr. Lauren, who has used them for, now I think a couple of years and has helped so many patients. And it's funny to listen to them. I always sit in the back when I have guests. I sit in the back and let them, my guest and my husband talk. It's very entertaining. But I would love your thoughts on, because they're obviously not going anywhere. That's just one thing I think people have to realize that even if you are just like, more like my husband, and you're like, come on, do you really need a medication to eat less? They're not
Oh
going anywhere.
boy. Um, yeah, can of worms. So they are being largely abused right now, and they are not being used properly in most cases.
I agree.
So I truly believe that if you are taking a GLP-1, you need to be working with someone who is monitoring you taking it, and you need to be on the lowest effective dose possible. That may even be below a starting dose. So we, in most cases, try to microdose only with them. If we are dealing with severe metabolic dysfunction, then you may need to go a little bit higher in dose, but only if necessary. And they're a tool. They are not it,
Yeah.
and a lot of people are using it in that way. They're using it as the only thing, and they're under eating, and they're not getting enough protein in, and they're not strength training, and all of the bad things that they're talking about in social media that can happen with them will happen when you do not use them properly. When you use them properly, they are an amazing tool. They are anti-inflammatory. They help clean up old unhealthy immune cells. They help resensitize cells. And we use them in a lot of cases because we deal with a lot of like severe metabolic dysfunction and weight loss resistance cases.
Mm-hmm.
And in those cases, a lot of those people have burned out GLP-1 receptors. And
Yeah.
so you can take all of the GLP-1 foods and all of the,
Yeah.
diet variation and do all of the
Probiotics. Yeah.
exactly. And it ain't going to do anything for that
Yeah.
GLP-1 receptor that's not hearing anything. You need something
Yeah.
to go and sit on that receptor and tell it to go. And so in of the cases, it's never the first thing we use. Like we do so much work up front for people before we layer it in because sometimes you don't need it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But the one variation that I really like using it in are my high stress females that can't lower their stress because they're CEOs or they're moms of littles and CEOs, and they like exercising and they like their lifestyle and they can't change it or don't want to change it, but they carry inflammation because of it.
Yeah.
And so they follow the diet, they do all the things, they do everything I ask them to.
Mhm.
And a really low dose GLP-1 in those cases can help them peel back that inflammation. And it helps them just have a little bit of what I call like accident forgiveness in their life to where
Yeah.
they can go on a vacation and they can eat out and not have to worry about inflammation going crazy, right? And for a lot of women that deal with like chronic joint pain or have, aging aches and pains, like I said, it's very anti-inflammatory. So a lot of those things can improve. But you have to use things alongside it. Like we monitor blood sugars when people are on it. We do certain diet strategies to make sure that while we're on it, what we need to fix and improve is actually fixing and getting improved.
Mhm.
So it's not just take it, it takes away my appetite, I don't eat, and I lose the weight. You're going to come off of it no metabolically healthier than when you went on it.
Yeah.
So we're big fans of them.
Okay.
I've used them in many cases because many of the cases that I have are extreme metabolic resistance from people that are chronically stressed, overtrained, and just they do everything right and they can't get that fluff off, right? And some
Okay.
people live with it and they're fine with it.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't know. I mean, like a lot of those women come in and they do everything right and they, work out and all the things and their A1C is 5.6.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, now
Yeah.
we're knocking on the door,
Right.
we're close to that pre-diabetic range. So
Yeah.
there's just so many benefits to them and they keep making them better and better. And so like, side effects are less. They're again, they're being abused. There's a lot of bad news around them, but when used properly, they're a pretty incredible tool.
Yeah. And I definitely agree with you. I've seen some very close personal friends that have had amazing results with them. Do you feel they have any place in somebody's life that doesn't have to lose weight?
You know, they release they're dopamine affecting, right? And so they're going to take away a lot of the hedonic urges that people have, addictive behaviors that people have around food, alcohol, things like that. And so, a lot of people can argue this in terms of just, like your husband, be more mentally tough, right? What about someone that has an addictive behavior and has food as like their coping source? Or someone that, maybe not someone that doesn't need to lose weight, but someone that's 400 pounds and can't get off their chair because it's painful. Like those are the people it's going to change their life, right? And the people that maybe don't need to lose a lot of weight, I think there's other benefits to them. I think that, like I said, they're extremely anti-inflammatory. They've been shown to be cardiovascularly protective. Like there's so many things that they do outside of help people lose weight. And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of people take them beyond that reason. But in general, as long as you're monitoring things, eating adequately, eating enough protein, weight training, doing all the things you should be doing while on them to maintain a healthy physique and composition and overall like general health, why is it anyone else's business? If people are using it right and like it's not
Yeah.
harming them. They're
True.
monitoring things, and the problem is that most people aren't monitoring things. And most
Yeah.
people, and then what happens is they aren't eating enough. Now we're dealing with a lot of nutrient deficiencies. I see a lot of hair loss on GLP-1s. I see a lot of other side effects that aren't being talked about because people are just they're not using them properly.
Yeah. Yeah. Also in the world of social media, it's no different than diet and exercise. Just, I actually heard a reel today of an older, I think he was a personal trainer, and he was like, let me explain or let me try to nail the fitness influencer. Let me see if I can describe them. I just watched it. I wish I could pull it up. It was cute. But he explained how they figure out something that works for them, and they have the great physique to say, yeah, this exercise program worked for me or this diet worked for me. So then they become an expert and they spend that time creating a brand and telling the whole world that this worked for me, it's going to work for you too, which, it's very
Mhm.
boxed in.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's kind of the same with these medications as well. If somebody could be using it very responsibly or not responsibly, but because I see on TikTok all the time, all these, compound pharmacies that sell all of these different types of peptides for research purposes only, you can, and very inexpensive, where, like you said, you're using it on your own. You don't have anybody guiding you. But if you've got a very fit, healthy looking, say, woman that's, sharing that she's using these, then that's where it could become problematic. And I just feel like everybody will use them because there's
Yeah.
no regulating, and nobody ever shares that there could be side effects.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And
So,
again, I think it's another thing. I think one of the things that they do, and again, they're improving them. I saw this a little bit more with semaglutide than I do with tirzepatide or retatrutide, but I think that they start to cause detoxification within the body. And if people are coming
mhm.
onto them with a lot going on and they haven't visited healing on a deeper level, they can
Yeah,
start feeling some kind of way when like
absolutely.
you start regulating blood sugars and the body starts healing and
Yeah,
detoxing.
that's
So
true.
it's just
Don't do
again, you
it.
can preach from the mountaintops as much as possible of like you need someone monitoring that is trained and understanding how to use them and what side effects are and how to avoid those, and people are still going to go into it because it's quick weight loss,
Yeah,
in most cases. Like
yeah,
and the more the better, always
yeah.
in America. Like
Mhm.
if some is great, more is always better, and it's not, and especially in these cases. And so I think that the people that, I appreciate the people that say that they have used them. I
Mhm.
I went on 6, 8 months of a really low dose because again, I was doing everything right. I was
Yeah.
I was tracking all my food. I had even tried to
Mhm.
get myself into ketosis. And
Yeah.
because of my history of overtraining, high protein, tons of
Mm,
all the macros, right? My body was stuck in this sugar burning state. I could
mhm.
not get it to flip into ketosis, even on a
Yeah.
keto-based diet.
Wow.
I used the GLP-1 as a tool
Hmm.
to flip me. And
Hmm.
like inflammation just fell off of me. And it was crazy. And it's like, okay, I could have kept struggling. And like I wasn't overweight. I was never
Hmm.
overweight. I was still, fit. I was lifting. I was by all biomarkers for the most part, I was healthy.
Hmm.
But my blood sugars were like 98, 99 a lot of time. Like they weren't
Little
crazy.
red flag. Yeah.
A little inflamed. We were,
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
high stress, little kids.
Yep.
And it's
So,
like they kind of gave me my confidence back. And I never went above I was using tirzepatide, 1.25 micrograms or milligrams, so like
mhm.
half of the starting dose.
Sure.
And it was just enough because again, doing everything else,
Hmm.
right? Doing everything else. And I know Dr. Fitz's story is the same. And
Yeah, I
so
was gonna say very similar.
it's knowing how to use them properly and not ignoring the other pieces of health. And
Mhm.
like I said, I think they can be a great tool, but they
Yeah.
are like any great thing that comes along in Western society, it gets abused and it gets monetized.
Yeah.
And now we're here.
And I don't think I've ever talked about this yet. I'm very familiar with retatrutide, which is still in testing.
Yep.
If people have not heard that yet, there is, the semaglutide, the tirzepatide, and now a third one that is three different areas of
Yep.
helping you with that. You want to share that for people that are, like, did what
Yeah.
she said?
Yeah. Yeah. So retatrutide actually just became available through our compounding pharmacy.
Oh, really?
So
Okay.
yeah, so we use Vital Medical.
Okay.
So it is a team of nurse practitioners, and they're amazing. I love it because they partner with health coaches.
Okay.
And so, you meet with them, you meet with your health coach who's also working on the diet and the lifestyle piece. And then the nurse practitioners work on, the medication pieces. And then you can manage all of it. And so it's a nice little setup we have. And I live right by Dr. Fitz and her system that she has going on. And I need to go in there because I would love to go in and visit. And honestly, having someone local, I think is so beneficial.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of all of that stuff. And retatrutide is still in a little bit of research. So semaglutide, just insulin affecting, and then tirzepatide, insulin, and oh gosh, not glucagon, because retatrutide affects glucagon.
GLP and GIP?
GIP. I was like, not GLP, GIP.
Yeah.
And so some tirzepatide affects insulin and GIP, and now
Hmm.
glucagon. So GIP byproduct affects glucagon. But now we have all three of them being largely affected. And glucagon actually increases blood sugars, insulin brings them down, right? And it seems strange. And honestly, it's so hard to explain. And like I've even
It
been
is. It
in
is.
like conferences and doctors are even struggle to explain like the mechanism of how it all works. But it basically helps regulate and stabilize blood sugars from multiple different aspects of how our blood sugar system works ultimately.
Yeah.
And so now you are having not only the insulin support from semaglutide or the GIP support from the tirzepatide, but now you have all three of the supports to help bring blood sugars into a nice stable place. And a lot of people, like I said, that have maybe liver stress or have situations where glucagon is produced, not producing it adequately, now it's just a more effective, less side effect
Mhm.
variation. It's a different generation. And I mean, GLP-1s have been around technically for multiple decades.
Yeah.
It's just they, now that they're mainstream, they're making them better and better and better.
Yeah.
And so, retatrutide, we don't know as much about in terms of how it's going to improve and affect things differently. From what I've seen, because I have a very small sample size of people that have been on retatrutide, or maybe a handful, it seems very similar to tirzepatide. And
Okay.
so it's, we'll see. Time will tell. It is very, very new in the past couple of years in terms of research. So I can't say much on it. But yeah, it essentially affects from all different levels in terms of how your blood sugar stabilizes and, preventing the high and lows. So it's like a triple agonist versus semaglutide's a single agonist, tirzepatide's a double
Oh,
agonist. And
yeah. And
so,
you can't take it with a grain of salt, but there's a gentleman, he's pretty. So he caught my eye when I was scrolling through TikTok. And he always starts his TikTok with long time no see, and so that for some reason just caught my eye. So I listened to him, and he tends to take a lot of peptides. He's a peptide boy. Trying to, grow in the gym, takes all
mhm.
sorts of
Yep.
peptide, but he was the first one I heard about retatrutide, and how he's described it is different than the other two, because he says that it doesn't take your appetite away near as bad, but but what it does is it takes the hedonistic. You just don't, like, if you order pizza and normally you're just like, I can down the whole three-quarters of that
Yep.
pizza. The pizza comes and you're like, I'm hungry. I'd love some pizza, but I'm really good with just one or two slices. And I don't know if that's true or not, but what a wonderful thing if it is,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
you've got
Absolutely.
it doesn't, because taking away that appetite, from what I've heard with some people is, I mean, they can't even talk themselves into drinking water. It's just like all of that's completely
Overdose.
gone. And not, maybe they're on a way too high of a dose, but to still have that appetite, but for it to help take away the need to very much indulge, could be a beautiful
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, that's always one of the main indicators if someone's on too high of a dose is they cannot eat. Like
Yeah.
it's telltale sign.
Yeah.
Same with, slower digestion, constipation, mood. I actually saw that a lot with semaglutide is people had like a really malaise mood. They just like
Mhm.
didn't
Sure.
want
Mhm.
any, and it was kind of the hedonic thing, but it was just like not even only around food. It was just all the time. And it was very
Yeah.
dependent on the person. Um,
Okay.
and so I haven't seen that with tirzepatide, and the appetite suppression with tirzepatide is not as strong. Um,
Okay.
and so, yeah, the retatrutide does seem to have a little bit more around the urge to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they do think that with that, it's going to be a better option for type 2 diabetes and
And didn't I hear in peptides, the specific ones are not my, I'm more of a CJC 1290, not
yep.
1295 girl. It took that one for a while. But that they also help with, do they in and of themselves, or at least tirzepatide or retatrutide that you are aware of, help with fat loss at all? Or is
Yeah,
it
no, they do. They support weight loss.
okay?
So and it's not just one, it's all right, it's all three. And so
Okay.
like they're not as in my experience, the semaglutide was like mainly around weight loss and
Yeah.
Ozempic, right? It was around weight loss and the insulin effect on blood sugar to get blood sugars down.
Hmm.
Now, the GIP is more of the gastric inhibitory. And so it's you feel more full a lot faster.
Yeah.
So you can't overeat. And now the glucagon effect seems to be again aiding in blood sugar and weight loss, but a little bit too on top of like tirzepatide, I do not find decreases the urge for things for a lot of people. Like
Okay.
they can still eat, they still feel an appetite, they still people still want a glass of wine here or there,
Yeah.
but they just can't overconsume.
Okay.
And that's what I find with the tirzepatide. I think the retatrutide's concept is that it now is taking away a lot more of that like urge for the, indulgent things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everyone's
But
different. Doses are different.
but like AOD, or any of these, was it tesamorelin and stuff? There is no fat burning, like specific, not weight loss, but specifically fat burning.
Mm-mm. Those are so testosterone we see a lot with people trying to like grow
Yeah.
because of the growth factor impact. So we'll do, build phases with people on them. Um, that and like a really, really low dose on Zandrolone or something that is, not
Okay.
harmful to the liver, like many people take it in high doses with Anavar. But doing, an 8 to 10 week cycle, focusing on a ton of strength, diet manipulation, those are more of like the more advanced fun peptides that you play
Yeah.
around with people's bodies and physique with.
Yeah. Yeah. And
How much we can optimize.
but the darling of all peptides, BPC 157, which I've talked about for so long because I've had Mick on it for years because he just keeps breaking himself. And whether he's having surgery or, he goes and breaks, his foot or ankle, that, we can have that readily available for that recovery. What a
Yeah.
beautiful, and for the beauty aspect of it, which is going high and right, I apologize, but I'm seeing the research on, like the copper peptides, that
Yep.
combine the
Yep.
BP
CKU.
157. Yeah. That's promising for, some 51-year-olds who've had a lot of sun damage that want to, help heal skin because it's really great for inflammation and for giving it the nutrients, your skin, the nutrients. So peptides are amazing.
Oh,
And
they're a crazy world.
but
I've just been in them in the past couple of years, and it's been life changing because a lot of the
true.
people we work with are like, I'd rather take an injection once a day or twice, twice a week than like take a bunch of supplements and so it's those types of populations that want to truly optimize and
Yeah.
use the
Uh-huh.
cheat code, right? Why not? Like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
exist. They're
Yes.
amino acid combinations, right? They're not
Mhm.
they're not drugs, they're not
Right.
medications, they're optimizers.
Mhm.
I used BPPC after I had my tummy tuck. I was
Yeah.
like, heck yes, let's get inflammation down. Let's, speed up
Heal
healing.
faster. Heck
Um,
yeah.
oh yes, and it helps with GI healing too. We deal with a
Uh-huh.
lot of like chronic gut cases, colitis, Crohn's, all the kinds of things. Um, BPC is almost always used in those cases because of how anti-inflammatory it is.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think it's wonderful. And the doctor for my husband specifically, when we got him on it, because he was going to have foot surgery, we started it beforehand and he went in and he was shocked. He said, he was maybe 6 weeks post surgery. And he says, you are in the place of someone that's a year post surgery. He healed so fast that it was like he was beside himself. And,
I wish. I've had many surgeries in my day with athletics, and I wish I knew about BPC when I had my
yeah,
Achilles
yeah,
repair and my ACL repair and all of the
yeah,
things.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
will have it when I go through my 50s and 60s with my ACL repair that's 40 years old at that time. And
Oh, yes, yes. But just like, talking about hormones, it's you have somebody who understands them, and especially if you take hormones and you use different ones, the person that you are working with needs to understand what happens when you take this one. Does it affect this one? Do you need this one if you take this one? Are they counterintuitive?
Mhm.
Don't be your own. I'll
I'm
tell you,
seeing that a lot with people
yeah.
taking GLP-1s on HRT. Because when you take
Oh,
GLP-1 and you start losing a bunch of weight and blood sugars start regulating, insulin's a hormone, just like
mhm,
the other hormones you're
mhm.
taking. And then
Yeah,
you have to adjust your HRT
yeah, yeah.
because are you having night sweats again or not? Like, and so
Yes.
it's a web, right? You pull one hormone, you're going to pull all the other ones. And so I've seen that a lot with the
Mhm.
GLP-1 in particular and people not taking it properly, but
Yeah.
it affects sex hormone
Mhm.
production
Yeah.
and how you're using your sex hormones if you're on an HRT, how you're detoxing your sex hormones, right? I've even seen some small research around like how some GLP-1s can actually create estrogen dominance because of the slower
Mhm.
detoxification and the slower gastric emptying. So,
Sure. Sure. Makes sense.
there's
Yeah.
so many interwebs
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
have to be aware of and able to spot and ultimately, know how to manipulate. And
Mhm.
it's the danger of how available a lot of these things are
Right.
today.
Monitor, monitor, monitor.
Mm, yep. Yep.
So the beautiful world of science and technology with peptides and bioidenticals, shifting a little bit to just plain old diet and exercise. What advice can you give the ladies out there that are, because my audience is, of course, I've got the cutie pies, the ones in their 20s, but 30s, definitely 40s and 50s, how it's different. It's different, even for me, at 51, how I train at 51 now versus what I used to do.
Oh my gosh.
So, and you're the same way, but women need to understand, we've talked about inflammation. I don't care how healthy you are. When you get older, you just take a little bit longer to recover.
Yeah.
And you have
Yeah.
to take that into consideration with whether you drink more, whether you splurge on your pizza and beer nights, whether you love something very extreme like CrossFit, or you're a runner, ultra marathon runner.
Yep.
The difference between the 25 and the 45 or 55-year-old.
My gosh, such a big difference. Well, one, I always ask, like, in that period of time, how much stress have you accumulated?
Yeah.
What have you been exposed to? How much have you taken medications? Have you taken birth controls? What has accumulated in terms of your body, chemical, physical, trauma, all of these different stressors that just build up and add up over
Mhm.
time. It's
Yeah.
not like we get a clean slate every day when we wake up. Like it, things add up. And so that piece cannot be ignored. And unfortunately, the world that we live in is just getting more and more toxic by the day. And it's literally hard to be healthy now. Like it is a conscious effort to be healthy.
So
And
true.
so it's that. And then the
Yeah.
other piece is as you lose your hormones, I say, are kind of like your backup system to your stress of, tolerance. And so when you
Yeah.
lose hormone levels, you lose the ability to tolerate the stress at the level that you could when you
Hmm.
were 25. And so although you didn't change anything that you were doing, physiologically you're changing. And so you
Hmm.
need to change because
Hmm.
otherwise you're just going to keep spiraling downwards until you hit rock bottom and no one wants to end up there, right? And so the
Yeah.
sooner you take action on it, the better you will be. And I kind of explain it like a soundboard. You can't just push all of the dials up on a soundboard. You have to manipulate them like stressors.
Mhm.
You have high
Yeah.
stress in exercise. Guess what? You have to pull back stress somewhere else in your life. You have high stress with work because you're advancing in your 40s and work. Okay, maybe workouts look a little bit different, right? You just had a new kid. It's huge stress. You need to pull back on some other areas. So you cannot have chronic dieting, training 6 days in the gym, hit classes all the time, and you're trying to advance in your job, and you're trying to be a great wife to your husband, and you're trying to, do all the skincare and all the, like, you can't do it all at 100 all day long. You just can't. You're just going to live in your sympathetic state, your stress state constantly. And
Hmm.
so I just look at that, perimenopause time as like this rebirthing that happens of becoming an amazing new version of you that's just different, but better, in my opinion. I, you know,
Yeah.
I can't speak just yet to it. I work with a lot of women, but like I think my late 30s and early 40s and 40s are going to be some of the best times of my life
Yeah.
as on the trend and trajectory that I'm on because I have the tools, right? I have the tools to get through those things and know how to listen to my body because we also look at genetics. Genetics play a huge role in inflammatory predispositions and like how easily you turn on inflammation from exercise, from going out to eat, from all of those things that are kind of inflammatory triggers. I have realized more and more because of the stress of running a business and doing, I have two littles, I have a 6 and a 3-year-old right now. Like, I cannot train even half of what I used to. I used to do CrossFit competitively. Now I'm doing 3 days a week, and we actually just changed it to where I might even be alternating every other week. So I'm going to do 3 days a week, and then I'm going to take a week and I'm going to do sauna and cold plunge 3 days a week.
Ah,
And then I'm going to
okay.
do three. And so it's constant manipulation because
Sure.
we've seen if I let too much stress happen for just a little bit too long, weight starts coming back on. I start getting really tired. Like it just happens faster in your
Yeah.
late 30s, early 40s. So
Mhm.
it's an adjustment period and you need to be open-minded to how things might need to change because you just physiologically are not the same anymore. And the sooner we can accept that and adjust to be able to live an amazing life still, the easier it'll be.
Yeah. Yeah. I a lot of my listeners have also been my clients or have messaged me through social media. Love them. And every time, 9 times out of 10, when I'm working and when I start asking questions and learning, trying to figure out, what's making them not feel like themselves or 100% or resistant to anything, to happiness, to weight loss. the first thing that always comes out of their mouth, 9 times out of 10, is, I'm exercising. I love my exercise and I think I'm eating well. And can you
Yes.
share a little bit with it's so much more, and you just did, which is what triggered me to say that. But to reiterate the importance of it's so much more than, you know, your
Yeah.
your your exercise, your movement, which is so important. But we
Yeah.
tend to put that on it, on a hierarchy. We put it right now. And do we think it's the most number one thing that's going to make us, look
Yeah.
and feel our best. And then diet is always the second thing that they mention, which, is in my humble opinion,
Backwards.
should definitely be above exercise. Um, you see that in your practice as well, that the exercise gets
Yes.
so much attention, and not the thought of stress, to
Hmm.
box breathe, to meditate, to give yourself a warm bath, to lose yourself in a book, to go barefoot in the grass and walk around, to go outside and take a deep breath, to get the sunshine in your face. I could go on forever.
Oh
Those
yeah.
things are as important, if not more important, than the 30, 45 minutes that they're so proud of for being in the gym, which is important, but especially as we get older, and sorry, Beck, I just keep, but I've obviously been on my phone too much today. The in my algorithm, I'm sure it has a lot to do with that. But Gabrielle Lyon was talking when she just
Love her.
she's got beautiful legs, stunning, talking about the importance of protein. And then I went and there was this young gentleman showing these high protein meals, and they looked amazing. I started following him. Um, we're kind of thrown at, to eat a lot of protein and to get in the gym and lift those heavy weights. So important. But I just coming from someone who works with a lot of women as well, who do that, but still can't find their happy, whatever that happy is. Um,
Yeah.
Words of advice, or what other things they can do outside of those two things that they think are kind of what they think they need to focus most of their energy on,
Oh
may not
gosh, yeah.
be.
Couple things. One, I always ask them like, is it getting you where you want to be?
Yeah,
Because if it was, you probably wouldn't be sitting here in front of me.
yeah, yeah,
So I need you to trust me. And then I explain the why of why a lot of times it happens. So like for
yeah,
a woman that's training 5, 6 days a week, we are not allowing enough time for the body to truly recover and build back muscle tissue properly. On top of the other stressors of, whether it's not enough food or whether it's not enough sleep or not enough, parasympathetic time.
sure.
Versus if you give your body more rest time, guess what happens in the parasympathetic, that rest and digest? You build muscle. It's an anabolic state. In the sympathetic nervous system, it's catabolic. You break down muscle, right? You also you release muscle destroying and fat storing hormones in the sympathetic state, that fight or flight state, right? And so if it was working for you, you wouldn't be where you are right now. Your body's obviously showing you with the level of inflammation you have. I always called it like puffy strong. I was puffy strong. I was super strong in the gym, but I had this like layer of marshmallow fluff over me that like you couldn't see the
Yeah.
physique that I had, you know?
And Becca, I want to cut you off real fast because is that one um symptom of
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
inflammation is
Lack of
to see.
vascularity.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
lose vascularity. That's one of the first signs I see of
Okay.
women that we're starting to see like that chronic sympathetic,
Yeah.
metabolic dysfunction for sure. And anyone that's been vascular and like lifts a lot knows that look.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
when you lose it. Increased heart rate, blood pressure, all of those sweating, all those things are that sympathetic. And in the parasympathetic, your body repairs. It
Yeah.
repairs. It's where you experience sexual arousal. All of my women that come to me, they're like, I have zero libido. Yes, you can do testosterone, but if you never calm the F down, like we ain't getting
Yeah.
anywhere. You are going to continue to
So
experience
good.
the
Yeah.
lack of desire because
Yeah.
you're never in the parasympathetic. You're never in that rest and digest. That's also where you stimulate digestion and elimination, my chronically stressed, constipated women. I love the reels that are always like, that pretty girl over there has digestive issues because it's always the pretty girls that like are constipated and bloated and like,
I haven't seen that, but that's funny.
but and in that parasympathetic, it's also the feminine. I think so many women that have gotten the physique that they want, gotten the job they want, gotten the, life that they want, they've lived in their masculine a long time. They've lived in that logical, focused and strong and assertive type mindset. And
Mm,
we have gotten away from the intuitive and the nurturing and the grateful and the receptive, right?
yeah,
And I hate
yeah.
that it's masculine and feminine, but it is, I mean, like that's how we look at it. It's the feminine energy, like you said, the calm,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
relaxing, the sitting and watching a show just for the love of watching the show, not to like learn something or
Yes,
and so
yes. Guilty of that. Guilty of
yeah,
that.
and so I always say, like, imagine you have 100 coins to give to either the parasympathetic or the sympathetic. I bet if we talk to 100 women, 95 of them would be like at least 80% in the sympathetic. You're doing
Yeah.
all the sympathetic things. You're working out, you're dieting, you're working really hard at work, you're probably not getting enough sleep, you're getting your 15,000 steps in. Like, you're doing all the things.
Yeah.
But when are we calm and breathing
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
enjoying life just to enjoy it? Like, we
Yeah.
don't do
Yeah.
those things. And that's when the body heals,
Hmm.
when the body builds the muscle tissue we want to look toned. That's when the body improves digestion so you're not constipated and bloated. Like, you have to have both.
Yeah.
You have to.
And I love, I don't know how, I never know how my podcasts are put out there in order. I'm not the smart one who does that. But the podcast that I recorded before you, she was all about finances.
Mm,
It was wonderful, but she talked a lot about male and female energy, just like you are, with, the fear around money or making money or having money. So it's such a huge part of what we women really need to focus on is exactly what you just said. And I love that because you will, when you're in that masculine energy, because you want to be independent, you want to be strong, you want to be fit, you want to be respected. That's that masculine energy. That there's a yin to that yang big time, and to be okay with this, as she said, she even she goes, this is totally off topic, but it's, even with sex, she says, with you got to be in that feminine, energy for your man, and let him feel like he's in control, and that he's the man. And you ask, even if you don't need a glass of water, ask him for a glass of water, because he loves to please and he wants to do for you. And that makes him feel masculine, and that puts you in your feminine energy. And I'm like, that's so true.
it's so true. I always joke with my husband. I'm like, I know you complain about having to do things for me, but like, you would hate it if I always did things right or didn't need to. Like,
100%.
I was like,
100%.
I'm not taking the garbage out ever because that's your job. That's the man's job. I'm the helpless female over here that runs a business that is a mom.
No, yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, can you share with it's such good solid information, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, that I would 100% run to you um for help. You're very knowledgeable, on top of knowledgeable, very sympathetic, you can tell, and just full of great energy, and the fact that you have your own story is wonderful as well. Where does one start? It's what if, like everything you talked about, like, my sister was on GLP-1 for 3 months and she didn't lose weight. It took her a really long time for it to start to take effect. So they're
Mhm.
on GLP-1s, or they're considering them, or they're thinking they're perimenopausal, or they've talked to a pharmacist, and and they're starting certain medication, and they feel so lost. They feel so lost because everything is coming at them. They're like, gosh, I thought I was doing so good with my exercise routine and my carnivore diet.
Oh
Wait, they're just, but where do they start, Becca? when
oh
when
my
they
gosh.
know they're messed up, they know that things are not going the way they want them to, but they're trying so hard.
Mm-hmm. No, I hear that.
That's
So
a big ask. That's a big ask for me to
it's a
ask
big
that.
ask. And, it's the one thing that I always, and maybe I'm different here, but like, I would 1,000% pay to get time back in my life. And so I am a huge proponent of like, hire someone that is smarter than you, that has walked the walk that you want to walk, that you trust, you followed for a while, like whatever it might be, do a consult with them, do a blood work analysis with them, like do something, because having someone that is going to guide you is going to probably cut your time in half, if not
Right.
more. It's going to save you money in the long run. It's going to save you energy, because I talk a lot around mental energy and
Mhm.
not having things in my life that take mental energy that are unnecessary. So like, it's a big reason I ended up getting a tummy tuck, because I had done I was as lean as I've ever been, but I just had this skin that I
Yeah.
could not get rid of from my pregnancies. And
Yeah.
I spent so much time focusing on it. And
Oh,
now that I have that energy, that mental energy back, it's amazing how much more I get done and how much more I don't worry about. And how, like,
yeah.
it is incredible how much less stressed I probably am in my day. And like, that's an
Oh, sure.
extreme example and a very rapid, reward for what I went. But like, in the case of you've been struggling for a long time, you've done everything right, right?
Mhm.
Find someone that is going to help you that knows the cases that do everything right,
Right.
that knows how to help those people because it's usually a little bit deeper rooted than you think.
Yeah.
And it's usually having to make big changes that people just aren't comfortable enough to make on their own.
Yeah.
And so I'm a huge proponent of like, pay to get yourself time. I will do it over and over again. I've met many mentors that, have been lots and lots of money and I wouldn't take any of it back
Hmm.
because it's given me time in my life and it's given me knowledge that I would have never gotten in that short of a time as I got.
Yeah. I love that. And I think maybe you can add to my it's not a list, I have one thing, but kind of the red flags of when you're looking for somebody. You don't want somebody that just only it's like a one and done consult.
No,
Yeah, like I even know Dr. Fitz, it's a year contract, whenever I do anything with somebody, we always there's always a follow-up, even if there doesn't seem to be, I need to know, we need to set up that second appointment to see,
yes,
how you doing with your new
yeah,
diet, how's the exercise program
1000%.
going? So besides that, or is there anything else
I don't
that,
like guarantees. I know it
oh,
sounds crazy, but like if someone's going to guarantee you a weight loss in this amount of time or a result in this amount of time, like you can never predict what's going on with the
true,
body. And I
true.
will guarantee I will fight for that client and I will guide them through till until we're where they want to be. But
Mhm.
like a time guarantee when it comes to someone's health,
Yeah,
that to me is a big red flag.
true.
Um, and then, people that are dogmatic. I really struggle with because what I see, I know you mentioned earlier, like the influencer that says like it's carnivore. Carnivore is the
Yeah.
way. Carnivore is probably what worked with them, but what they haven't gone through is enough time to realize carnivore probably will stop working at some point. And so people that are dogmatic in one way have not had enough experience or knowledge, in my opinion, to understand that it's never one way.
Mhm.
And so I think those are two huge red flags that I always
I
look
agree.
for with people.
Yeah.
'Cause I get messages all the time. They're like, someone told me spinach is bad for you. Someone told me, because it has anti-nutrients, or someone told me that like I should
Bullets.
never consume X, Y, and Z. And it's just like
Yeah.
so out of context. And it's,
Yeah.
attention grabbing on social media that people are
Sure.
just striving for views. And so
Yeah.
like, and look for proof. I think it's the last one. Like look for proof that that person is doing what they say they're doing,
Sure.
transformations or testimonials or whatever it might be. So
Sure.
that's kind of those are my big four. I think yours is the
Yeah.
perfect one. We do a 6 month minimum contract with all of our clients, and
Love it.
we always say it's at least 6 months, probably closer to like 9 to 12.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, it's time. Health takes time, especially if you've been feeling not great for years.
Yeah. And one thing that Lauren and I talked about on our walk this morning, ironically, and it's kind of the opposite now. You used to look at social media, and if someone had a really large following, you were like, they must be so knowledgeable and they must have helped so many people. These days, and the conversation started with Lauren was saying that Brett Contreras had put out a reel about how we need to do something about the algorithm, because the more controversial you are, the more extreme that you are, the more views that you get and the more popular you become, and the more you're seen. When there's the littler people that really try to put out quality content, it's suppressed because it's boring. And so now these days, another could be a possible red flag is if it's a ton of followers. Where's that coming from versus somebody who could, have 10,000, 20,000, and they could be the most perfect practitioner for you on the planet. Don't judge because they have a smaller following. That actually could be a huge green flag, because they're putting out the real stuff that just is
Mhm.
boring, I guess.
I, my marketing officer, he does editing of a lot of my reels and stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to go back to him and be like, I did not approve this title. This is like, I just did a reel on top 3 things you need to be doing if you're taking GLP-1. And he put, don't get Ozempic face in like
Oh,
the title. And I was like, this is educational. This is not what I went for.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
here's
And
the
he did a good
algorithm, and
job.
here's,
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I hired I love him, this young Polish, I say kid, he's 19. And he takes, I talk inside the camera and he makes it more flashy and interesting because otherwise it's really boring. But sometimes he has, it's called he'll have a hook that he wants me to say. And I'm like, I can't. That's just not me.
I
It's
was told to say blue balls last week
yeah,
in a video. I was like, say your husband has blue balls the size of Texas. And I was like, I can't. I'm sorry, just not me. Not that I don't feel for the people that have blue balls because their wife has no
for
libido.
real.
Like, can't do it. Can't.
Same, same. So that's just for you guys that, love your health gurus out there. Love on the ones that give that that are careful. Oh, we could probably talk forever. Becca, I really enjoyed it. Just as much as I did enjoy talking to you the first time.
Oh, got extra time. It was even better.
Yeah.
It was exactly what we needed.
It's practice. But I really truly do. I knew this would be a great conversation, and I appreciate that my little bit of ADD going in all different directions. But um, your you and your team, because I know I've spoken with more on your team, are just fantastic. And I say women. I don't know if it's all women.
Yeah.
Okay, but just a fantastic group of women with a huge, not only very, very knowledgeable, and you guys, we were talking before we pushed record on the, extension of education that she's going because she's very comfortable in the field that she is, but you can always learn more. Another green flag. Look for somebody that's still educating themselves.
Yeah,
That's a big
absolutely.
one.
I've changed
So
my mind on a lot of things as I've
yeah,
learned more.
same,
Like, I'm
same,
not too proud. I'm not,
hmm
so
same.
there's constantly new information coming out. And for someone that never
Yeah,
is willing to, again, the dogmatic,
yeah,
the God syndrome, like,
yep, hmm
no, no,
yep.
there's always better ways being developed. So be open to finding them.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you share, I'll put in the notes, but just where people can find your content if they want to work with you, get a consult or see all the things, the wonderful things that you've done, where would they
Yeah, of
find
course. I'm at the Hormone Queen, super easy, at the Hormone Queen on social media. And then fitmomlife.com is our website because
you?
our practice is called Fit Mom. So, yeah, we work with all women and chronic conditions and all the things, health, lifestyle, diet, exercise, peptides,
Yeah.
HRT.
And they don't have to be a mom, right?
You do not have to be a mom. We've had that many question many times. No, it was the catchy name, right?
Sure.
It was the algorithm name. So yeah, you can find me there. We have a podcast, the Health Revival Show, as well that we do. So yeah, we'll have to get Dr. Fitz on and have a big,
Yeah.
big conversation. So
Yeah,
thank you
that
so
was
much for
super
having me. This
fun.
was super fun.
It was, and I appreciate your time and giving me the take two.
Of course.
All right, everybody, as always, I hope you wake up feeling prepared and you go to bed feeling very proud. Have a great day.